I, Brendan T. Byrne, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform the duties of the Governor of the State of New Jersey, according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
So help me God.
He was a lawyer, a prosecutor, a Superior Court judge, and then the 49th governor of the state of New Jersey. Hello, I'm Kent Manahan.
And I'm Michael Aron. We are here to take a look at the career and legacy of former Governor Brendan Byrne. Governor Byrne, welcome.
Thank you.
Governor, we could say this is the story of your life. So get us started.
I get nervous when I hear the word legacy.
Get us started. How did you get into politics?
Purely accidentally. And I've told people that being governor is mostly luck and a lot of it bad. What happened in 1973 is that the Democratic Party was looking for a candidate who could respond to the crisis of Watergate and with a law enforcement background. And I had it. And although there were 5 or 6 other candidates in the race at the time looking for the Democratic nomination, Hudson County had not focused on one. And so with days, literally days to go, I got in the race. Hudson County was open. I talked to the people in Hudson County, and I said, if you're willing to give me the line in Hudson County, I'm a candidate. And it took some talking, but with Paul Jordan and Mayor Rogers and Mayor Fitzpatrick, I finally got the line on a Monday, and I think Thursday was the deadline for filing petitions. So it was as simple as that. It'll never happen again, in my opinion. But it happened that time.
In the state of New Jersey.
And so there.
Well, Governor, you certainly in that short run must have realized that there were any number of obstacles that you would have to overcome. I think one of the stories about you was that once you got the nomination, in order to go into the general election and to beat your Republican opponent at the time, you had to become a speaker.
I never did. As a matter of fact, the story is that when I became a candidate, they hired a nice professor of speech from Seton Hall, and he stayed with me for 3 days and resigned out of frustration, not that he had accomplished his mission. But,
and you're now the most sought after after-dinner speaker in the state.
I'm not sure about that, but anyway, what happened seriously was that I've always had a little bit of a sense of humor. I got it, I think, from my mother, maybe from Ruthie, but post facto. Anyway, I've always had a little bit of a sense of humor, but when you're governor, they ignore the sidelights and they concentrate on what the income tax rate is going to be or whether we can do the pilot. They forget about anything humorous that you say. So that was all.
So once you're out of office,
then
there's no more substance. It's only humor. Right?
Yeah, well, what do they care what I think about the Highlands?
Well, we're going to get to that.
We're going to get into all of that.
Hopefully.
Right.
You mentioned the income tax. You will be remembered as the governor who gave New Jersey an income tax.
No,
is that a good thing?
Ironically, Jim Florio will be.
But you really did.
You beat that rep too.
And that's the nice thing about Jim Florio. Is that he upstaged me on that issue. Yeah, we started the income tax. There had never been a state income tax in New Jersey. The old Newark Evening News, now defunct, was hysterical about no income tax. So no candidate or no governor could really get anywhere with it, although Dick Hughes came close. But I'm not sure that's what I'm going to be remembered for.
Well, it took an act of the state Supreme Court to force Well, they threatened to close the schools, and was that what?
Let me straighten that out for a minute. Yeah, the income tax was not as a result of the Supreme Court. Supreme Court just wanted money. And you recall in 1970...
Money for the schools.
Yeah. And when I ran for re-election, my opponent had an alternative which did not include the income tax. The Supreme Court wasn't interested in income tax. They were interested in money. And there was a whole mishmash of suggestions which did not include an income tax, which I rejected. And so what I was tough about was I wanted an income tax. And I remember there's
cartoons
in the paper showing the disaster of other plans, but the Supreme Court.
Why did you want the income tax?
Because that was the responsible way of solving the problem.
And yet, as a candidate in '73, you said that you foresaw no need for a hike.
We had a huge surplus running in New Jersey when I became a candidate in '73. We hadn't faced the school problem, and we didn't know what the cost of it was. And frankly, I had talked about the income tax as a possibility, especially in the primary, but it wasn't an issue that I raised by myself. I mean, you don't go out there and say, hey, the first thing I'm going to do when I become governor, because then you don't become governor.
That tactic remains today, right?
Yeah, well, nobody has even suggested we repeal the income tax. I mean, we've added to it. But there was a reason for saying we don't need one, because we didn't need one to balance the budget. And I kept saying, I don't know how I'm going to solve the school situation. We'll deal with it when I become governor. But I took the responsibility for it, and I took the responsibility for misleading the citizens. And when I ran for re-election, I made only one commercial in which I said, I'm sorry that I misled you, how to do it, and it's worked.
We have to follow that because, Michael, that led to the governor's, in his re-election bid, being called one-term Byrne. And your Republican opponent, Ray Bateman, championed that, and your promise on the income tax as he tried to defeat you as an incumbent, which he didn't do.
And had he defeated me, he probably would have come around on the income tax issue too, because Ray told me that when he talked to his handlers, he told them that if Byrne wins their primary and I'm against the income tax, Byrne's going to beat me. He was counting on somebody else winning. As a matter of fact, everybody was counting on somebody else winning that primary.
And you surprised them all. Governor, let's move ahead a little bit. 1977, when you signed the casino bill, you signed it with the now famous words of warning organized crime about any activity in New Jersey. Let's take a listen to those words.
Organized crime is not welcome in Atlantic City, and I warn them again. Keep your filthy hands out of Atlantic City. Keep the hell out of our state.
So, Governor, looking back now, what did you know then about what organized crime's designs were on gambling in Atlantic City? What's the inside story?
Now, let's put that in context. When we did casino gambling in Atlantic City, we were the only state outside of Nevada that took a chance on legalized casino gambling. I was told I couldn't do it. And my own cabinet guy, my attorney general, my state treasurer was against it. They said, you can't do it. I had a superintendent of state police I had great confidence in, Clint Pagano. I said, I think we can do it. Unfortunately, it became such a compulsive requirement that we keep it clean that I forgot about some of the other problems.
Such as?
But we were able to do it. There's nobody today who claims that organized crime is in the casinos themselves in Atlantic City.
Well, Governor, your colleague, Tom Kean, a good friend of yours who succeeded you as the Republican governor of New Jersey, of course, says that you were really the only governor that could have passed and seen the passage of casino gambling in New Jersey, because no one else believed in it but you.
Sure. And I had been for it, by the way, just as a citizen, because I had been prosecutor of Essex County. and I knew how to run a gambling operation.
So that was your secret.
Why did you push it? Why did you want it?
I didn't really push it. I said I would sign the bill. I mean, guys like Steve Persky and people in Atlantic City were the ones that pushed it. But I figured people are gambling in the state of New Jersey, and organized crime is making a lot of money out of it. And I thought, gee, it was time for a little sharing.
That had to go to a referendum for the people.
Yes, it did. It went through
on.
one which would have authorized it in the whole state. And I opposed that. And then they did another one confined to Atlantic City. And that passed.
Governor, in the late 70s, you led an effort to restrict development in the Pinelands, South Jersey, 1 million acres. I've read that you consider that the hallmark of your 2 terms, as governor. Is that the case? And if so,
oh, absolutely.
Why?
Because, take the income tax, for instance. Someday we were going to get an income tax. Whether it was me or somebody else, we're going to have to get it. Someday we're going to have to take over the transportation system. Someday we're going to have to do a lot of the other things I did, reform the inheritance code. The Pinelands was something that I got committed to because I had read John McPhee's book. I had read the paragraph in the book that said we couldn't do it, and I decided to do it.
You had to do it both at the state level and the federal level?
No, the federal level wasn't a problem. Matter of fact, the federal, people misunderstand. What all the federal government did was identify the Pinelands and promise federal support for a Pinelands program, but they didn't do much. We took and by the way, the Pinelands was originally defined by Rutgers University, not by the federal government. And so what we needed was a comprehensive zoning and planning program in the Pineland. And that involved controlling development. The federal government had no real power other than if they made some appropriations there, which they did very little of.
I assume you were fought heavily by local interests in South Jersey.
Including people who thought it was a good idea. For instance, legislators, well, I'll give you an example. One legislator who came up to me and said he was going to vote against the Pinelands bill, and I said, hey, I got a poll here. Your district is overwhelmingly for the Pinelands preservation. He said, yeah, but the contributors to my campaign aren't. And that was what we had to overcome.
Let me ask you this. The current governor is trying to save the Highlands as if he wants his legacy to be similar to your legacy. In the debate over preserving the Highlands, there's a lot of talk about the mistakes that were made in the Pinelands and compensation for certain communities in the Pinelands that have grown too readily on the borders of the Pinelands. Was it done incorrectly down there?
Nothing is perfect, believe it or not. What happened in the Pinelands is the communities bordering the Pinelands preservation area overdeveloped. Now that was their fault. That was not the Pinelands that made them develop. They just took advantage. As a matter of fact, I think it's an example of why we needed the Pinelands, because all of the communities would have been like that, because you had Atlantic City looking for development outside the Atlantic City area, and they got it. So sensible planning by any municipality would prevent this kind of problem. What happened is, Little Egg Harbor Township is the example everybody uses, went gung-ho for development. They didn't have to do that. They really didn't have to do that. As a matter of fact, New Jersey, as I've often said, is the most densely populated state, more densely populated than Japan, and we've got to control development in New Jersey. And everything is done in terms of creating jobs. Well, I'm not sure that should be the touchstone for how we judge problems and solutions in New Jersey. We've got 8.5 million people here. I don't think we can handle them anymore.
Another hallmark of your administration, Governor, was certainly the Meadowlands. You pushed that through when others were fighting against it. Another cause of yours in which you faced a great deal of opposition. In fact, Governor Rockefeller in New York tried to kill it. Now, it was born in the Cahill administration, but you get the credit as really moving it ahead.
The guy who really deserves the credit for it is Joe McCrane, the late Joe McCrane, who was Bill Cahill's treasurer and who talked Bill Cahill into the concept of the Meadowlands. But when I became governor, the difficulty was in financing the development. There was just a little hole in the ground and no way to finance it. And I got to say for the New Jersey business community that they put that together. Bud Foley was very helpful in getting them to do it. We had to overcome Nelson Rockefeller and all of those rumors about we're going to build something in New York right next to you and so forth. It took a lot of courage, and I remember finally we raised, I think, the last $50 million. The president of the Prudential, chairman of Prudential, called me and said, "We'll give you the $50 million if you'll let us have one appointment to the board." And I said, I'm not going to abdicate my responsibility, and I'm not going to give you a carte blanche on a member, but I would be happy to consider any candidate you gave me. And that satisfied them. They gave me a spectacular candidate, and it went forward.
Well, tell us about the dream that you had, because wasn't it a fact that you brought in the Army-Navy game, the Hamiltonian? Were you responsible for the Devils and the Nets and the whole dream? What was your dream?
Actually, well, the dream was to give Bob Mulcahy the job and let him do it. And he did.
And he did.
Now, the one thing that I take...
Formerly in your administration.
Oh, yeah. And I put him in the Meadowlands and got fired by Governor Whitman for doing it. Anyway.
We want to hear that story, too.
Sure. I got a lot of stories. What happened with the Hamiltonian is this was the premier harness race in the world. And it was out in Illinois. I had been in New York originally. It was out in Illinois, and we decided one Saturday morning to take a private plane out to DuQuoin, Illinois. You don't know where it is, and I didn't. But we went out there and we met quietly with the board of the Hamiltonian. We talked them into taking it to New Jersey. I was out there personally doing that, riding through cornfields to find the fairgrounds. Anyway, we got away with it. A couple of days later, the governor of Illinois found out about it. Hasn't spoken to me since, although we have been good friends. But anyway, that's how we got that. The Meadowlands, I think it's all a matter of hustle. We hustled for these things.
And thus your name went on the arena, and then it went off the arena.
I was
what were your
immortal
thoughts?
for several years.
Was Christy Whitman really not invited to your 80th birthday party at Drumthwacket because she took your name off the arena?
You'll have to ask Ruthie. I don't know about that.
She handles the PR on that.
Governor, back when you were governor, a reporter asked you what you wanted your legacy to be. Let's hear what you said.
I'd like to be remembered for a better educational system, for better treatment of the underprivileged in the state. But I'd also like to be remembered as the guy who finally demolished the image of New Jersey as being between New York and Philadelphia, and brought to New Jersey its own identity and its own sense of pride and its own glamour.
Governor, you wanted New Jersey's identity to change from what it was. Has it?
Yeah, I think it has. A little disappointed that the Giants put NY back on the helmets. But certainly New Jersey has its own excitement, and Atlantic City is a date line that everybody in the world recognizes now. There's the Meadowlands Sports Complex. Everybody understands it. And maybe we've oversold New Jersey now, because people are starting to look at Somerset County and the nice places and the quiet places to live and saying, gee, maybe I ought to move there.
New Jersey was a joke for many, many years. Is it no longer a joke?
Well, you can still say funny things about New Jersey, and so what? I mean, there's a debate going on as we speak about whether the Sopranos help New Jersey or hurt New Jersey.
What do you think?
Every time I speak out of state, I start off by saying, I'm from New Jersey. You got a problem with that?
And do they?
Not at all. Not at all.
Governor, on the occasion of your 80th birthday, good wishes were sent to you by former President Jimmy Carter. You really entered the national arena in endorsing, becoming the first governor to
Sure.
endorse the candidacy of Jimmy Carter when he was running for president. How did that come about, and how has your relationship with him?
Jim, when I first became governor, Jimmy Carter was governor of Georgia. And I saw him perform at several governors' conferences, and I thought he was a pretty solid guy, and I knew he was thinking of running. And so before he left office, I told him that if he really decides to run, to come see me. And when he decided to run, I had him up in Princeton to lecture to the students at the university. And he wowed them, and I stayed with him, and was always never regret it, and always thought that he's been an underrated president, maybe an overrated ex-president.
Was that an office you ever aspired to, the presidency?
No, no. But I was happy to be part of, I think, the Carter administration, and I had people working in the White House most of the time he was president. We were very close. We had programs. I went down to the White House a number of times. He never would let me play in the tennis court, but that's another story.
He kept pretty close tabs on that tennis court, from what they said. Governor, you made reference a little while ago to the Pinelands bill, and the contributors didn't want it, so the legislators couldn't go for it, and it sort of sounds like nothing's changed in 25, 30 years. But I ask you, have things changed in 25, 30 years? Is Trenton the same as it was?
Everybody tells me that there's a good deal more bitterness in Trenton than in Washington. Well, Tom can't tell you in Washington he's found bitterness beyond his belief. I think the willingness to work together is sort of gone. We could always get a couple of Republicans on our bills, even though I had overwhelming Democratic support. And guys like Bob Littell, who are vestiges of the good old days, are still there, but he sort of stands out.
I wonder when I hear that. I hear it a lot, that it was more collegial in the old days. We used to go to Lorenzo's together after sessions, but I wonder how much of that is just sort of nostalgia for times past, for youthful times.
Yeah, what you're saying is nostalgia isn't what it used to be, I know. But no, we would have, for instance, a bitter sort of debate on the merits on a bill. And then we would adjourn to Morven and go swimming, Democrats and Republicans. And I would have, Sunday afternoons where you bring your kids to Morven. It was the governor's mansion in those days. But there was a warm feeling. And Dick Hughes would tell me how he and Charlie Sandman were bitter foes on bills, and yet good friends. One of my close friends still is Brian Kennedy, who was a really right-wing Republican, and yet Brian and I would play tennis, we would solve problems. I got some judges confirmed on the tennis court. It doesn't happen. I don't think it happens anymore.
Governor, as we wind down, I'd like to get your thoughts on some of the things that are now called the Byrne gems. The words that you speak when you go out on the tour and talk to people. And one of the famous ones is the line about, now that you're no longer governor, when you get in the back seat of a car, it doesn't go anyplace. How do you come up with these things?
That's when you know you're no longer governor. The most famous of my lines is the five fingers line, where I say, people now wave at me with all five fingers. And I actually told that to Jimmy Carter, that line, and he used it. And I saw him, as a matter of fact, I witnessed the signing of his book contract. And I said, if you write that book and use that line and don't credit me, there'll be hell to pay. He wrote the book, he credited me.
And everything was just fine.
Ah, yeah.
Governor, is there anything you would like to add? This is your life, as we started out saying. Briefly, as we end this interview, is there anything that you'd like to say about the Byrne years?
Just that I hope that some of the good things that we've done will continue to be good things. New Jersey is a great state to be governor of and a great state to live in. And I appreciate that with a great staff, and I'm here because I had wonderful people working with me and around me, and I can't thank them enough because it was them that allowed me to sit here today.
Well, Governor, we want to thank you for spending this time with us. Michael and I and my colleagues at NJN, thanks so much for your time. This has been an enjoyable occasion to have you here in the hot seat with us.
Thanks, NJN, and thank Al Gamper.
And thank you. I'm Kent Manahan.
And I'm Michael Aron. Thanks for being with us. Thank you, Governor.
And thanks for the memories.